What up, people? Long time no see. Welcome to the introductory episode, if you will, of the First Point segment of the Bloody Water podcast. It's been a little bit. We took a little bit of a hiatus, and me and AJ actually recorded a standalone episode, regular episode of the podcast yesterday. But not sure how many of you guys were in the loop. The internet was broken, more or less, yesterday. Cloudflare servers, don't need to go into the technical jargon, but we recorded the episode, and we just couldn't get it to actually post, couldn't get it to edit, all that stuff. However, didn't want the prep to go to waste. So I wanted to bring in this segment here because the name is in essence what the premise is going to be. First to score wins. Common in jiu-jitsu when you're in the training gym, you'll do a first to points or first to submission. The goal here is to take the first look at some of these matchups here. Not going to go through the whole entire docket like we would on a normal episode, but really I'm just going to dive into one or two matchups that interest me on the card that we're discussing this week. UFC Atlanta, that's the card we're breaking down this week. Joaquin Buckley, he's been making the rounds on social media. He's evolved a ton in his career, I would say. From the meme knockout, Kevin Holland licks the hand, baps him with the right cross and puts him down, to the row of good victories he's put together as of late. It's been some impressive stuff, but funny enough, he's been called the Unk Killer, if you will. He's taken out the OGs of the game, and you hate to see it, but we know that in this game, no matter when you become a fan and when you lock in, the people that you love to watch, the people who have incredible performances, really only maintain that longevity for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's like on the latter end of things. And Kamaru Usman, if you take a look at when he won his championship originally against Tyron Woodley, that fantastic performance, 2019, 6 years later, we're wondering, does the 38-year-old Nigerian nightmare still have what it takes to fend off a contender like Joaquin Buckley? Because Buckley is no longer a prospect. But if you look at the string of wins that Buckley has put together as of late, doctor stoppage with Colby Covington, you knocked out Wonderboy Thompson, you got a big win over Nursultan Ruziboyev, which is underrated and a little over-respected at the same time. It's hard to gauge on that one. We know what's been happening to Vicente Luque, knocked him out, and then, of course, the great white Alex Morono. Career hasn't really panned out the way that many would have thought. He did get finished by Chris Curtis back in 2022, and he lost the decision to Nasruddin Imavov, which I would say aged well, because Imavov is right there in that title spot next up for the middleweight title. So with all of this being said right here, I think that the interesting thing that you need to look at is activity trumps all. This is actually kind of like in the women's flyweight division. I know it's kind of out of left field, if you will, but Jasmine Jasvidicius has been so active. She's put herself in the running for like an opportunity to fight for a title. Let's not forget that she lost to Tracy Cortez, and Tracy Cortez ranked behind her. I think she's at like number 10 in the rankings right now, not in title discussion, but she has a victory over the person who has a higher shot at the title right now. Why? Because she's active, because you give people so much entertainment, so much activity, they forget some of those poor performances. Josh Van could be another one of those prospects as well. Got knocked out by Charles Johnson, stepping up to take the number one contender fight against Brandon Royval. It's because you put yourself in that opportunity. And Joaquin Buckley has, interestingly enough, earned finally the opportunity at the biggest name that really you can get in the division, who's not, I would say, the elite of the elite caliber as of late, just from what we've seen in the last couple of performances. The drop-offs are pretty steep, but Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian nightmare, has lost 3 in a row. We all know the first Leon Edwards fight, he was cruising to a decision victory, got head kicked, headshot, dead, 5th round. And that was the beginning of the end, more or less, for the Nigerian nightmare's trajectory that he is riding on. Because in that rematch against Leon Edwards, he looked a little bit like a shell of himself from the pedigree of the pressure, the takedowns, all of the tenacity that we would see from the Nigerian nightmare, all got fended off relatively easily by Leon Edwards. And I think a lot of people, we all said, hey, he was winning the first fight handedly. He should be able to get it done in the second one pretty easy as well. But there was a couple fundamental and technical keys that Leon Edwards honed in on that really shut down the entire game of Usman, which really surprised me. Some would be the underhooks, the breaking of the grips when he's going into that clinch on that single leg, double leg transition that Kamaru Usman likes to do a ton. But the other hole that you saw was against Khamzat Chimaev. And, 10 days notice, up a weight class at middleweight. This is kind of like a throwaway type performance, if you will. But aside from the cardio, you got a good one too. not a ton of volume being thrown from Kamaru Usman. And when the wrestling is kind of thrown out the window, if you will, like it's not a viable game plan, I don't know if I trust him enough to be a fighter who can win on volume against a guy like Joaquin Buckley. He wasn't able to do it against Chimaev, but Chimaev was throwing a ton of takedowns his way. And what did he do? He did the one thing where I think that Kamaru Usman still has the opportunity to make a really impressive gatekeeping performance here against Buckley, which is utilize that championship cardio. This is a 5-round fight. And we just haven't seen 5 rounds out of Joaquin Buckley. We put him in position against Covington, but he got the stoppage after the 3rd round. Let's not forget, though, Joaquin Buckley, he did appear to tire a little bit after about the 2nd round of his fight against Colby Covington. Now, it's relative when you say tire because we didn't see the man gas out, per se. We didn't see the man just dead to rights in any predicament. But you see the activity wane. And that's where Kamaru Usman and his lack of volume still has an opportunity to make this a really close fight. Because if you're looking at the numbers being put out by both of these fighters, significant strikes, average roughly about the same, like 4.2, 4.3 for both of these fighters right here. So like on paper versus what the eye test gives us, it's a little bit of a different story. Buckley is arguably one of the lower accuracy fighters that you will see in his weight class. I think in the UFC in general, he lands about 41% of his significant strikes versus 64% for Kamaru Usman. We know Trevor Whitman gave him the nice jab, the big 2 that he's able to put across, like he knocked out Jorge Masvidal, like he was able to even put on Khamzat Chimaev. But then again, Buckley, he's not a straight punch fighter. He's a big hook fighter, right? He wants to get in there and he wants to throw big shots, big entries. Those are the counter opportunities for Kamaru Usman. But you also have to take into account the man Buckley has 15 knockouts, 21 total victories, 15 of them via knockout right there. So I think that this is where age is going to play a pretty serious factor for Kamaru Usman. 38 years old, fighting a 31-year-old athletic specimen who had that Impa Kasanganai crazy viral knockout that everyone was talking about for years. The man clearly grew up watching a bunch of Bruce Lee movies because I was actually doing a Bruce Lee marathon the other day, and some of the kicks that I saw in there, I was like, oh, that's Joaquin Buckley. That's what he's been training right there. But seriously, the man has been taking his training really serious, in my opinion. This fight isn't just going to be about who throws the bigger shots and who throws more punches. I think the one fundamental aspect from a technical perspective where this fight is going to be really interesting is who's going to win the clinch. Oftentimes we would see a vintage Kamaru Usman performance. He walks you down, puts pressure on you, sticks out that jab, pushes you up against the cage, and starts working on the clinch. From the clinch, that's where he can get a lot of his takedowns. It's that double leg, single leg transition, back and forth until you find the opening, scoop you up, put you on the ground. Doesn't have like the most trips, right? He's not particularly like one of those Dagestani wrestlers or like a Merab Dvalishvili where he utilizes a ton of foot sweeps and trips and things of that nature, but he does have the ability to get the takedown. Now, Joaquin Buckley, we have seen Colby Covington took him down. He's been held down by a couple of different fighters. And the one thing that just really irks me just as a jiu-jitsu guy watching him is sometimes we will see the lack of digging for an underhook immediately to get back up to your feet. When you get pressed in a position where you get put down on the mat, one of the first things you need to do is get to a hip, dig an underhook, create space, and then get up. Now, I will say, in the Colby Covington fight, while it doesn't happen immediately, he did eventually get to the underhook. He uses his athleticism, though, to be able to get back up to his feet. So he digs the underhook, he kind of hip escaped, created space, and this is oftentimes works against the cage, got back up to his feet, utilizing that underhook. So dug the underhook, hip escaped, got back up, we were good to go. Big shots off the clinch, which is normally the Kamaru Usman special. So we'll see what ends up panning out right there. The question is going to become, is Usman still athletic enough to be able to hold down the specimen, or does he have the technique to be able to hold down the specimen that is Joaquin Buckley? Because if he can continuously get back up to his feet, then I don't really think that Kamaru Usman is going to be able to pull the victory out at this stage of his career. If Buckley ends up getting held down, utilizes a lot of that athleticism trying to get up and ultimately keeps getting put back down, or is unable, if you will, to be able to get back up to his feet in the first place, that burns up a lot of energy. Once we get to rounds 3 3, 4, and 5, that's where you could potentially see a Kamaru Usman take over, but I don't know if it would be on the feet. I think ideally it would be a transition between setting up the strikes to get to that takedown and win kind of via control time. But dominant Kamaru Usman, that is what you saw. It was just control time, little ground and pound, nothing too major, but you weren't seeing a ton of finishes. Let's not forget the man has 20 victories, 9 via knockout, 1 via submission right here. So the key to this fight, in my opinion, is going to be extended combinations from Buckley and staying off of the cage. We know in those one shot, trade him back and forth, Kamaru Usman can win this fight. If he gets you up against the cage and can hold you there, put you on the mat, he could win the fight. But whoever wins the clinch wins the fight. I think Buckley wins this fight. I think he gets it done via knockout. Should be able to find the finish as long as he doesn't fall into a couple of those traps. But then again, let's just talk about the consequences of the victory right here. He is currently riding a 6-fight win streak. Most of the fighters that he has this win streak on, I believe, have been older than him, so this would add another one to the resume. He's fighting some of the older guys. Does this mean that Joaquin Buckley should be next for a title opportunity after beating a former champion? Some would say, some have said, that Kamaru Usman has been one of the greatest welterweights to ever walk the planet or walk the UFC, which I think is kind of interesting given that we have the GSPs of the world and things of that nature. But he did go on a run. He beat Colby Covington a bunch, Jorge Masvidal a bunch, Gilbert Burns, right? Tyron Woodley. Like, the run was impressive, don't get me wrong. But I don't know. This just adds another OG to the hit list. The new crop of welterweights are here. Joaquin Buckley falls into that camp, but is he ready for those top-ranked guys? That's what will be interesting to see. What does the fight against Joaquin Buckley and Shavkat Rakhmonov look like? Or Ian Gary versus Joaquin Buckley? We don't know. But I think that the Joaquin Buckley that we see here today is going to be enough to get the victory. As I'm watching this one right now, minus 290 is where Joaquin Buckley sits, plus 245 comeback for Kamaru Usman. Again, I don't think that this is a complete domination spot right here. If it is, that'll tell us something completely different. But I think Joaquin Buckley gets the job done. And that is going to be the main event for UFC Atlanta. That's your first points. That's your first score of the week. We'll catch you next week for the UFC Baku breakdown.